Well, what a beautiful day in Texas. Just walking in, I don't know if there's 30 acres or how much ground is associated with this place, but it's really nice, pine and oak forest, and they've got these beautiful buildings and cool equipment. Looking forward to meeting a lot of new friends and seeing a lot of old equipment. Hopefully learning something today. Say hey, Nate.
Morning.
So not only have I never seen a vise like this, I've never imagined a vise like this. Okay, and then the second thing you have to think about is what kind of a shop did that come out of and what kind of work were they doing?
How wide are those jaws?
It's got to be 10 inch.
Exactly 10.
10 inch, yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Turned into an incredible event that we absolutely will be doing again next year.
It's like a mini Disneyland is the only way to explain it.
We just got photobombed by A-bomb.
You're doing that anvil bucket challenge?
Yeah. And the anvil wasn't working. Yeah. So if I understand the story right, the man who conceptualized and acquired all these artifacts and built these buildings with one helper, built it out of pine that looks like it was probably harvested and milled here in this part of Texas. And he skeletoned this framework and he drew the drawings and he engineered it. And here's an example of a beautiful post with a heart center. That is, the heart is captured in the middle of this post. And how do I know that? I know that by how it's twisted. It's anchored in the ground in a bracket cast in concrete. And as you travel up this thing, you'll see it's rotated about 1/8 of a turn to where the haunch that is set on top of here to support the two sides of that beam assembly is rotating out from underneath the beams. Now it's stopped rotating, this post is dry, the checks are into the heart and it's done twisting, but that's just a real good illustration of when you're picking out a board that needs to remain stable, stay away from the heart, the pith, the center of the tree, where I don't know what's happening in the center of the tree, but I call it a heart center, lumber graders call it a heart center, and it's going to give you a board that twists, so be aware of that. This is a good example of what can happen. Nate and I have had a terrific weekend here in Lindale, and it was much more surprising than I think either one of us were sort of prepared for in a lot of ways. But one of the things here is we're getting ready to leave, and we'll get back on the freeway and we'll drive back to an airport and get in a jet and fly back to another part of the country. One of the things that's been reinforced for me is the reality of the recent past. So this old Mill Pond Museum that was put together where the stuff was gathered by a single individual, Mr. Parrott. And the story of how he acquired all this stuff and built all these buildings is worth knowing. But the important thing is that he was driven by an appreciation for the technology of just a generation or two or three previous, where the people were just like us, but they had different tools to deal with the challenges of their lives. And he's gathered all this stuff from domestic things that you would have in the kitchen to the things that were in the mill, line shaft technology and water wheel technology and farming technology and how barbed wire has changed and feed sacks and everything, scales and grist mills and wagon wheels. Look at that. This thing's sitting here sharp enough to run for cutting firewood. You would put a chunk, a short section of a log on this sliding table and push it through. And it would just, and the chunk would fall off and you'd slide it over. OSHA approved. Sure beats a crosscut. Old Galloway hit and miss motor running it. Yeah, it just gives me nightmares when I think of Robert Frost's poem. That's what it was right there. Right there. Boom. Got his hand. One of the things that was noticeable for us this weekend was the undisguised goodness of so many of the people that were here. And we understand that they were coming for sort of to a holiday, sort of an outing, and they were meeting people that they'd seen on YouTube, and so that means that they were playing nice. But it meant more than that, because the way that Nate described it last night when we were talking about how terrific the day was that it seemed like a company picnic of a company where everybody got along pretty well. Because as we were visiting with people, there were cameras and purses and things, just kind of people would set them down when they were looking at the exhibits, and they weren't looking over their shoulder to make sure nobody was messing with them. And kids were running all over, and the antique equipment was running, and nobody was anxious, and nobody was competitive. And maybe that sort of explains why the artifacts of Americana appeal to a particular type of person. I don't know, but I know this. I know that a significant percentage of the closest friends and most significant mentors and people who have had the biggest impact on my life have come into my life because of a shared interest in old ways of life and old ways of doing work. So maybe that's a piece of advice I would offer, is if you're interested in acquiring some good friends, some people that you can trust, that you look for a place where old equipment and old technologies and an appreciation for the past, where those things are valued and pursued and documented and cared for, where people regard themselves as stewards of antiques rather than owners. You're just liable to meet some people there that you will always be glad you knew. At least that's how it's worked for me. And it looks like down here in this part of Texas, it's worked in more or less that same way for a lot of people. We've had a great time here in Lindale. And maybe next year you can swing by.
I've heard about Buc-ees for years, never seen it. You've been here.
Yeah, I've been here once, 10 years ago.
We're gonna gas up and go show you around, see what it's all about, see if it lives up to the hype. Oh, good call. Thank you. Very good call. Something from right here. Maybe I'll do this, add this to it right here. Yeah, we'll eat those too. Here we go. What'd you find?
So these used to be called beaver balls.
Oh, is that what this is?
Yeah, same thing. All right, I'll put these away.
Did you see like the bulk jerky section?
I didn't.
It's like a deli. There's like a meat counter. Yeah, come here. Wow.
What have you figured out?
Nice. Let's try some of these.
The other one kind of tastes like a beaver nugget. A little bit of molasses.
Is a beaver nugget the most popular thing here?
Oh yeah. That's
But-
what we're kind of down for, yeah.
What are the things that are red and yellow round balls? Was there something like that? Yeah. Didn't that were they red and yellow? Maybe I'm mixing it up with just the logo.
There you go.
All right, beaver nuggets is what it is. Okay.
Yes, sir.